Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's great to be with you today. We're doing part three, and it's our conclusion on the projected 53-man roster for the Raiders. As you know, I think it was Wednesday. We did the part one. Then Friday, we did part two. Part one was offense, part two, defense. Today, we're going to very quickly just address the specialists and then immediately get right into breaking down this roster and what does it mean with you and kind of discuss roster building and how good teams and good general managers build a roster. So let's dig right into it. It is very rare in a league with 32 elite teams, and even the teams that are perpetually crap are elite with talent. You don't get to this league and not have talent. Now, some teams are better drafters and accumulating that talent or whatever that may be, or willing to pay more so they keep their talent. But it's never an issue with talent when people make it to this league. Having said that, it's very rare in this league when you have the best player at their position. Now, the Raiders have one on offense, one on defense. The offensive player, the best at his position, is Brock Bowers. That's not even debatable. He is, the kids like to use a term that say he is him, meaning he is the big dog. He is the best. And Brock Bowers is the best tight end in the National Football League. And to say that about a player after 1 year is unicornish. And I said this on the first day when I talked about him. To the best of my knowledge, he's the only rookie I've ever said this about. Again, there may be one other, but I don't think so. He is on his way to Canton in a gold jacket, and that's Brock Bowers. The other happens to be the best in his position and one of the top three players in the entire league in Max Crosby, best player on the team, and I believe he's the best defensive end. I think that you could certainly make an argument, and one that a reasonable person wouldn't really argue with, in TJ Watt. I think Max is better, but I think Max would even tell you, just someone making that argument, you're wrong. It's me, but no one would call you nutso or weird for thinking that. I think TJ's tremendous. Um, But when you come over to special teams, now oftentimes special teams is so underrated by fans, but the best football team. In fact, I was asked this question a couple months ago. I was speaking at a school, and the person said, "What's the one thing about football that most people don't know, but NFL people do?" And that is, in the NFL, the best, and even in college, the best teams are the ones that understand one third of the game is special teams. So they dedicate a third of their practice time and a third of everything else to special teams. They get that, they understand it, and they place high level of importance. I'll tell you something I learned from Jim Tressel, and others do it, but I learned it from Jim Tressel. He's the first one I knew that really did it at a very high level. When he was the coach at Ohio State, and Jim's a friend. I love Jim Tressel. When he was at Ohio State, it was an honor to play special teams there. It was a big honor. And so star players would come in and they're like, I don't do special teams. I never did special teams in high school. I'm a star player. And everybody that went to Ohio State on scholarship for Jim Tressel was a star player. And all of a sudden, he created a culture. Their best players wanted to be on special teams because he would talk about how a punt flips the field. A kickoff can pin him and set your offense up if your defense is playing at a high level. And he really talked about how big special teams was. So those guys wore it as a badge of honor. Um, I always marveled at, I mean, their best players, guys on their way to the NFL. And down there playing special teams. Obviously not quarterbacks, but everyone else, man, they wanted to play it, and it was a badge of honor. And a lot of people do not understand nor value. A few years ago, a Raider fan, and I don't remember who it was, or I would give them credit. The Raiders would seem to get in the red zone, not be able to punch it in and kick a field goal with Daniel Carlson, and then they would put up um, the count from that children's cartoon show, and it would say -4. I always loved that because they were talking about how the Raiders, because they couldn't punch it in the red zone, lost 4 points, and they were absolutely right, by the way. I'm not bringing this up to critique that. The problem is it almost minimized, though, how good Daniel Carlson was. And, when your offense is performing at the level it should, it almost minimizes your kicker, your um, field goal kicker, because you are punching it in. But that wasn't Daniel Carlson's fault. Um, Daniel Carlson, the kicker, in my opinion, is the best kicker in the league. You can make some arguments for some other guys, but his ball placement on kickoffs, extra points, field goals, leadership, all of that. He is not only a tremendous human being, and let me tell you, he is a tremendous person, great person. I like him a lot, and I respect him as a man. But he's the best kicker in the league. And so you got Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, Daniel Carlson, and he's that good. Uh, he is that good. Then you turn around and you have AJ Cole, who is the best punter in the league. And there isn't a debate there. There are some other good ones, but there is no debate. AJ is standalone best punter. Again, I think Daniel is, and I think across the league he has that kind of respect, but there are a couple other kickers that you can put in a league with him. There's nobody in AJ Cole's league. He's so far out ahead, he can't even see anybody in his rearview mirror. Again, like Daniel, high quality human. Him and I have some mutual friends. Shout out Jake. Um, but he is a high quality person. He is a high quality human being. He is awesome at his craft and an elite punter. So when you understand the punt is now this is another thing I talk about when people ask me some other things about football that maybe fans don't understand, but NFL and successful college people do. Uh, the punt is the most important play in all the game of football. Now, when your offense sucks, you see way too many punts. But your punter can get the offense. I mean, all of a sudden, let's say the offense gets down there and they start at the 20 and there's a bad call by a ref and they end up pinned inside the 10. Well, a good punter can put that ball down and pin the other team. Punt, I'm going to say it right now, the punt is the most important play in all the game of football. And I know a lot of people get up to go get their hamburgers or get another beverage or go to the bathroom on punts. If you're at home, that's what commercials are for. Don't miss out on punts. And AJ Cole is a star. I said last year, and I stand by it, he was the MVP of the Raiders last year. Now that tells you you have a bad football team, but it doesn't diminish his performance. It's just like when the offense was terrible and couldn't score, it didn't diminish Daniel Carlson. And then the last specialist, Jacob Bobenmoyer, and I want to talk about him for a minute, because it's very important. Um, Jacob is in a group with Tabor Pepper of the San Francisco 49ers and Trent Sieg, who used to be here, of like three guys who are the best at their position. If you were to ask most people in the league, and not fans, but in the league, who are the best long snappers, you're going to probably hear one of those three names. So you arguably now in your three specialists, your long snapper, your punter, and your kicker, have guys that either are clearly the best or in a group tied to be the best. So I want you to think about that for a minute. You got one defensive guy, one offensive guy, but all three of your specialists are in there. And then you add the coach, who is phenomenal. Coach McMahon is stud special teams coach. I literally just love that guy. Um, he's phenomenal. And the players love him and he's demanding and all of it. But the Raiders special teams are very special. And when you're the Raiders, you're used to great special teams. That is really a bedrock. There have been times the Raiders have had great running backs. There's been times they've had great quarterbacks. There's been times they've had great wide receivers. But when you look at it, almost always the Raiders are just great in special teams. Again, there's some anomalies, but in general. And so you've got a third of your game that's led by elite specialists. I remember, I think it was my first year covering the Raiders. It may have been my second, but in one of them, I was talking about a specialist on the team and how good they were. And fans are like, "Hey, have you looked at the stats? Have you looked at the stats?" Well, guess what? This particular person has 10 other guys on the field with them. So who have to go down and make tackles and everything else. It's so I didn't necessarily like the way the Raiders a previous coach was setting up special teams, but it didn't mean the specialists weren't talented. And the Raiders have three guys that are either the best, far and away, like Cole, or two that if they're not the best, they're tied to be the best. And that says a lot. So let's break down the roster now of how I projected it. I had three specialists, obviously. I just talked about them. Three quarterbacks, which is an anomaly. But I talked about that at length on Wednesday. I don't think they can hide Cam Miller for an entire year. Running backs, I had him keeping 4. Wide receivers, I had them keeping 6. Now, I do want to remember, I forgot, I didn't forget. There was one wide receiver I did not name, and I'll tell you why I didn't name them. Because I had the 53rd spot up for grabs. Now, if I had to pick today, I think the last spot in the 53rd would go to another wide receiver. And this would take the Raiders to 6 wide receivers. So I had the White Raiders taking 6 wide receivers, and that sixth one is Colin Johnson. Now, I don't think that he's a lock on this roster at all. I don't think that. But based on who's on the team today, I would have him making it. Again, I think he's got a shot for sure, but that 53rd spot, if somebody really shines, I think you could, they need to really shine in special teams as well. That 53rd spot is up for grabs. Then I've got 4 offensive tackles, which is a luxury. You could make an argument they're only going to keep 3, which is pretty traditional. But because it would make Thayer very valuable, but I know that they like Thayer, and I just think unless somebody makes them a really good offer, that they'll keep 4. Interior offensive lineman, I have them keeping 5. Now, again, I could see that number if Dylan Parham doesn't win the job from Jordan Meredith. I could see them if somebody made him a really good offer. But good offensive linemen that are proven are very hard to come by. If Dylan beats Jordan and somebody wants to make him a really good offer just because of numbers, but I've got him keeping 5 interior offensive linemen. I have him keeping 3 tight ends, 4 defensive ends, 5 defensive tackles, 6 corners, 4 safeties, and 6 linebackers. Now, let's break down the roster. We're getting a little bit more specific. I have him keeping 25 offensive players, 25 defensive players, and 3 specialists. There's your 53 man, and I've already done a previous podcast projecting the practice squad. Then on this list, there were 25 guys that I said were locks, just guys that I think, now, unless somebody did something stupid, these guys were going to be on the roster. And let's talk about those real quick. Geno Smith, Ashton Jeanty, Jacoby Myers, Dante Thornton, Jack Besh, Colton Miller, Delmar DJ Glaze, the Mule, Jackson Powers Johnson, Alex Kappa, and Caleb Rogers, Brock Bowers, AJ Cole, Daniel Carlson, Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz, Christian Wilkins, Tonka Hemingway, Adam Butler, Jacob Bobenmoyer, Jacorian Bennett, Darian Porter, Elandon Roberts, Devin White, IPM, Isaiah Palomao, and Jeremy Chin. Those are your 25 locks. So when you are John Spytek sitting up in your office and you're putting together, okay, how are we going to build our 53 man? You're looking at, I got 25 spots that are solid. I got a bunch of others with guys that are as close to a lock, but not 100%. Maybe I would use them in a trade. Maybe I would do a trade if somebody called me. Or what if somebody just beat them? But there are 25 spots on your roster. Now, if you're Philadelphia today and you're sitting there with your roster, you're probably sitting anywhere from 46 to 48 guys that you know they're making the team. They're not getting beat out. That's because Philadelphia has built this in such a way, Howie Rossman, who has done a phenomenal job, that's why in the draft, sometimes you'll see them give away a lot of draft capital to move up to get somebody they really, really want, because they don't have a lot of opportunities on the roster. And that takes us to my next point. I got 11 rookies making this squad. That means over 20% of the roster is rookies. That's not even counting new guys. That's 11 rookies. Now, when you are a team like the Raiders that are not a Super Bowl team, and they're not, let's not pretend. I know my wife thinks so, but I won't criticize her. But let's say that you are a rational fan and you look at it and go, okay, I could see the team making the playoffs. I don't think they will. I told you that. I thought they're going to probably finish with 9 wins and be 1 game out of the playoffs, but that's still an improvement. My wife is literally the other day came down to me and had showed me an Airbnb that she wanted to rent. And I'm like, why? And she said, for the Super Bowl. I said, I go to the Super Bowl every year. You never go with me. She goes, yeah, but you told me you'd take me when the Raiders go. I said, uh-huh. She goes, we're going to the Super Bowl, baby. Okay. Moving along. So when you're sitting there in your Spytek, now you got your board, you got your 53, you got your practice, you got your salary cap information. You're looking at this. And okay, here's some UDFAs. Here's some guys that we drafted. We got very favorable deals on. Very favorable deals on. And that's how you build a salary cap. That's how Philly did it. That's how the good ones do it. They build in that manner. Because let's say that when Geno retires, Aiden or Cam have come up and you believe they are your guy. Good. You brought them up in-house. That's why you don't lose a Trayvon Merrick like they did last year. Because when he's a year away and you like his projection, you sign him. So you get him on a long-term deal, and it was a good deal for both people at the time. This is why, getting guys deals done early benefits the team and it benefits the player. But the Raiders haven't had any stability to do this. I mean, Isaiah Palomao is playing like a really good player right now. He's playing at an elite level. And if he had hit, free agency, he made a little bit more money. But instead, Raiders get that, bring him in, they grow him. He's a homegrown guy. Malcolm Koonce, you picked me. I'm staying here. I'm betting on myself. Now you're going to have to pay those guys. And if John Spytek had drafted Trayvon Merrick and he got away, that would not have been a good look to your locker room. A locker room wants to look and say, you take care of your guys. This is why Pittsburgh every year is perennially good, because they're not paying those massive rookie wages because they're in the playoffs every year. They're picking in the 20s. So when they have to pay a guy, they're not worried about, oh my goodness, but I got a huge, top 3 pick or top 5 pick or top 10 pick I got to pay. And so 11 rookies gives John Spytek a lot of room to do a lot of things. The Raiders are poised. I have told you, I think there's one blockbuster trade that I could see them doing. There's another that, has been floated or at least talked about behind the scenes by people. I'm not saying Raiders, but by people that I could think happening. They have the resources to pull it off, but they also are looking at who do we need to extend. Jacoby and Colton are right there. They have a lot of cap room, a lot of cap room. And so, if the right deal came along at wide receiver, corner, linebacker, I could see them pulling the trigger on that. And when I say to you a right deal, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Look at Trey Higginson. Okay. The young man up at Cincinnati. The guy's balling out. He's very young, high character, high quality kid. You get a chance to sign him, that's a monster opportunity. And he's a guy that's going to be there a long, long time. If it's a guy that's not part of your long-term plan and it's just a 1 year, fill a gap, you're not going to overpay for that guy. But they have room for all of it. So 11 rookies would absolutely put the Raiders in a poised position financially moving forward. And the team is going to be better. And because of that, then you have the opportunity to look at them and say, okay, they're going to be better. And better teams means players are performing. And when players are performing, they get paid. Now, when you have 11 rookies, it allows you to do what the Steelers did. They lose Robert Spillane, which really hurt them. They didn't want to lose him, but they had to. But they had somebody behind them to fill the gap. Then they don't want to lose the Landon Roberts, but they had people behind him that if they let him go, they had developed. That's what good teams do. And when you got a fresh batch of rookies, it means you're drafting well and you've got those guys. So when you have to make financial decisions, so when you're wondering about a Trayvon Merrick, well, but I got this guy behind him. That's how you financially put together a roster. That's what the Raiders have done. It's a very good roster for them. When I say very good, I think it's much improved over last year's roster. And I think it's going to be reflected in the record, and not just because of the roster. I think the coaching has been incredibly upgraded as well. There you go, everybody. That's my 3-part 53-man roster projection, talking about every single player and talking about roster building. Thanks for joining me.